6:33. Today, again, in Washington, Rachel Reeves is hard at it, negotiating with American politicians about tariffs and a trade deal. But the Chancellor's biggest dilemma comes when she comes back home again to look at the very poor performance of the British economy and what that means for taxes, spending and borrowing. Now, I have to say, I find this stuff very difficult. I look at the options ahead for her, and I don't know what I would do if I was her. So what we really need is a shrewd, experienced advice. And we're going to get it now, I'm quite sure, from Minoushe Shafik, Baroness Shafik, a former president of the London School of Economics and Columbia University, deputy governor of the Bank of England, vice president of the World Bank, and deputy managing director at the IMF. Does she think that there is a useful and tempting trade deal to be negotiated?
I think there is a partial trade deal that could be negotiated, not a comprehensive one. And I say that because there are things that the US would ask for in a comprehensive deal around agriculture, food standards, and so on.
Back to chlorinated chicken and hormone-treated beef.
Exactly, which I think would be unacceptable to the UK side. So I think if they can carve out some sectors, maybe automobiles, but also technology cooperation, that I think it would be worth doing.
It's beginning to look as if AI and quantum computing, it might be the core of any such deal.
Yes, and I think that would be in both sides' interests.
So there's something there to be done. Let me talk about what happens when she comes home and she looks at all the numbers. Your former employers at the IMF have been pretty grim about Britain's prospects, and we're borrowing far more than we expected to only recently. So what do you think her options now are?
Yeah. Well, the problem with what's happened in the world economy is that the IMF has also downgraded expectations for UK growth. And the problem with lower growth is that it means you collect less revenue because people earn less and pay less tax, but it also means you have to spend more because more people become unemployed or require benefits. So it hits you on both sides. I think inevitably it means that she's going to have to look at both the fiscal rules, look at tax, and look at reducing spending.
All three. Well, let's talk about all three. Let's talk about the fiscal rules, because Howard Davies said on the show that he thought that the Trump disruption gave permission, as it were, for Rachel Reeves to look again at the fiscal rules. She said again and again, I won't do it, but if the world changes, you have to, as Keynes said, you change your mind.
Quite. And I think there are several things, including some things in the manifesto, that merit revisiting, given the world is fundamentally different than when those words were written. And those things include looking at the fiscal rules again. It includes things like looking again at our trading relationships with Europe, and a number of other pieces of legislation that are in the manifesto as well.
So we had Leo Varadkar on the show suggesting that we need to look again at the backstop and ways of kind of increasing goods trading, as Theresa May wanted way back in the day. I think, and go back to all of that. Is that the kind of thing you think the Labour government should be thinking about?
Yes, I think they should be looking at that. I think they should be looking at opening up other areas of potential cooperation with Europe. We're in a fundamentally different world, and if the US is not going to be the advocate for an open trading system, and given that the UK has always been a trading economy, we have to look at opportunities elsewhere.
So I guess the question is, how radically can we rethink and how quickly?
Well, I think there are some big things that have to be thought again. The growth agenda is still, how can I put it?
Feeble. How about feeble?
Feeble would be, yes. Yeah. Feeble would be good. So clearly we need to do more to encourage growth and productivity. There's some good things that the government's doing, like planning reform, that could open up all sorts of possibilities. But we need a bigger growth agenda.
Let me ask you about perhaps the most sensitive area of this, which is the effect of the national insurance contribution employers' taxation increase, which does appear to have had a pretty chilling effect on hiring and indeed on growth generally.
Yes.
Is that the kind of thing, nobody likes admitting they've got something wrong, nobody likes revisiting these decisions, but it may be the time that this is going to have to happen.
Yeah. So I guess I'd say, I wouldn't have chosen that tax if I had to raise revenue. I think there are other taxes that are better, like value-added tax or income tax, or even a land tax would be really desirable. They're less distortionary, they're more pro-growth. I also think that we need to look at some other things like, the way the labour market works. There's an employment bill that's currently working its way through Parliament, which reduces flexibility for employers and does some very good things, like gives workers who are on flexible contracts or part-time more rights,
some basic
and more stability,
rights,
which is a good thing. But on the other hand, if you've got a lot of people on benefits who you are hoping to get into the labour market, as the government is hoping, you need to give employers some flexibility to take risks on those people. And so giving them more flexibility now would probably be a good thing.
Do you think the world has changed so much because of what Donald Trump has done that Rachel Reeves has a bit of political cover to be able to say, look, I got this wrong? Or the world has changed?
I would say the world has changed.
And changed the policy in accordance to that?
I think so. And I also think that she has an opportunity, which she is taking at the moment in her time in Washington, to make the case for trade and for the UK to be one of many other groups, with a group of other countries, to be the coalition of the willing to argue for a better trading system, because tariffs will never deliver gains for anyone.
Gains for anyone. Now, Minoushe, you've done so many different things. I can ask you about lots of things. I'm really, really interested in how you read what Donald Trump is doing on tariffs at the moment, because he's offering cutout after cutout, exemption after exemption, and it appears as if he didn't really want a kind of huge global shift on tariffs so much as a series of bilateral conversations where people come kind of on their knees to the White House and ask for special deals.
Yes. I mean, I think it would be hard to argue that there's a coherent strategy here. The reason for these tariffs have changed and evolved. It's been everything from reviving manufacturing in the US to punishing China for protectionist policies, to raising fiscal revenues. So the objectives have changed and evolved. And I think at the moment, the current stance, which is 10% on everybody and 100+% on China, seems to be about punishing China.
145% on China, I think. Astonishing.
And the Chinese have retaliated with 125%.
They're not blinking. This is an even bigger conversation. But I've been looking. I think in this confrontation, China wins.
Well, China looks like the hero for a stable international trading system right now, and that's definitely the position they're taking. And they are looking. That's how they're selling themselves to the rest of the world, and particularly to Southeast Asia, who have been hit very hard by Trump's tariffs.
And I guess in the end, it's which civilization, if you put it that way, is prepared to take the most pain in the confrontation. Americans are being told kind of buckle up and hang tough and put up with extra inflation, put up with job losses. But America is a consumer economy, and we're only it's next November we get the midterms. I'm not quite sure how long they'll put up with this.
Yes, there is not a long tradition of, at least recently, of American consumers being willing to sacrifice. And the inflation will start to hit very soon, especially if the tariffs, even the 10% tariffs, will start to be felt very soon. So I'm not optimistic that this is a politically sustainable position.
As a former Bank of England woman, what did you make of Donald Trump's having a go at the Fed like that? It seems, again, to have bit him very, very quickly and very, very hard in the posterior.
Yes. So the history and the evidence on this is so clear. Independent central banks have delivered lower inflation for decades, and threatening the independence of your central bank is very foolish. And the markets punish you. And that's what happened in the case of Jay Powell. I think,
and he's come back from that. He said, "Oh, I never wanted to fire him. Oh, no, he's safe in his job. I wish he'd move a bit faster, but he's safe in his job." But even in the British context, a British Prime Minister telling the Bank of England to go faster in one direction or another would have gone down very, very badly in the bond markets, wouldn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And it's gone down badly in the U.S. Treasury market already, and already the U.S. government is paying more for its borrowing as a result of this uncertainty.
Minoushe, we've been hovering over all sorts of rather grim-looking statistics and figures over the last week. Just let's end. Give me one thing to be optimistic about Britain.
So I think there is opportunity in all of this chaos because we have a stable government. We have institutions that still work. If you recall, during the Liz Truss episode, she lasted for 44 days and the institutions got rid of her because it was, her policies were incoherent. So we have a system that functions. There is an awful lot of capital and talent out there in the world looking for someplace stable and sensible to go. And I think if we had sensible and really good economic policies in this country, we could attract both those things.
If we had them.
Yes, but here's the window of opportunity right now to kind of say, okay, we're taking a fresh approach and be the place that talent and capital wants to come to.
Minoushe Shafik, Lady Shafik, thank you very much indeed for coming in.